Well, we've come to the end of our little ball of twine. Tonight is the last presentation on the ministry councils, and it will take two parts. Ron Watts is going to come talk about the work that his council has been doing already. They've about worked themselves to death in 6 weeks, but also the opportunities that are ahead. And then I'm going to say a few words. Then he and I will take questions from the group about anything we haven't covered. So, Ron, if you'll come teach us about the community council. Thanks.
Well, thank you for being here tonight to hear me talk about the community council. It's something very near and dear to my heart since we first started talking about reorganization about a year ago. It begins, of course, with our vision statement. And this is a statement you've seen. It's on the front of our bulletins: growing in Christ and community, sharing God's love in the world. That's what drives everything that we do through all the councils. Doc has been leading us through a series of sermons on what each of these, what this vision statement means and how it affects each of our core values: worship, discipleship, missions, and community. You've heard each of the council chairs back last fall said a word in the worship service, a testimony in the worship service. There was an article in the Signal from each one of us, the sermons that Doc has just finished, and then now tonight we conclude this series in Speedle U, where we talk about each of these core values and how we're implementing them in our new organization. So I hope you're beginning to get the idea that this is important. We keep reiterating that because it is important. It's the way we've chosen to organize our work. When we did that reorganization, we decided that the key things were we needed to get more people involved, more opportunities for people to do the work of the church, and more of those projects needed to be led by volunteers. The staff is busy doing their regular jobs. They have been involved in everything that we do, but we need to recruit more people to do more of the work. The councils that we created, they're small, 4 or 5 people. They don't do all the work, but we do focus on our core values, and we want to make sure everyone has a place. We don't want anybody to feel left out. After all, our sign out front says, "You belong here." And that means everybody. Everybody belongs, so we want everybody to feel a part of our community. The challenges that we go to is that we are used to, as a church, we're used to having ministers do things. When you see something that needs to be done, you would go to a minister and say, "Why don't you do this?" And then we also, like a lot of organizations, we depend on just a few people to do the work. So we have that kind of obstacle that everybody has. But another one that is unusual or unique to this time is the pandemic. In the midst of all this, we became scattered. For a while, we could not even come into our worship service. We got to where we couldn't get together, couldn't see people. And then another challenge that we have because of the time that we live in and the culture of the country and most of the world is that few people see the need for God. If you go back a few years, if you invited someone to church, they would likely tell you, "Well, I'm a member over at this other church, and I don't go as often as I should," or "I know I need to get back to church." But today, if you invite somebody to church, chances are they'll say, "No, that's not for me. Never been, don't see any need to." That's a shift that we have to deal with. And when we approach people, it means we approach them differently. Because the reality is that they still need God. They just don't know it. They have this emptiness that they can't define, that they try to fill with other things. You've probably heard the quote, "There's a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of each man, which cannot be satisfied by any created thing, but only by God the Creator, made known through Jesus Christ." Do you know who said that? Anybody know? Well, it was a mathematician, scientist, physicist named Blaise Pascal. He was the one that said that a long time ago, and I think he's right. So people may not know that they need God, but they know they need something that God can satisfy. And I think another thing that we have, another reality of the day is that in spite of what they may or may not think or know about God, people want to help. They want to be able to reach out, give back to society, help people in need. And that's a good thing, because that's exactly what we're in the business of doing as well. We learned how important it was to be together during the pandemic. When we first started coming back down at the North Bridge, people were so happy to see each other because they had missed it so much. And we have that feeling, that I think a new recognition of what it means to be together, and we have that going for us too. The pandemic accelerated our use of technology. We were fortunate enough that we had been live streaming, so we were ready to get on with that. But Zooming, though we never would have thought of having a deacons meeting or a church conference except with people in the room. So necessity brought about that technology for us. So given those goals and those challenges and the realities, what does community have to do with it? Why do we value community? Our statement, our value statement for community, we grow in community, connecting and caring for each other and inviting others to join us. So there's the key words there: connecting, caring, inviting, growing. When we connect with each other, when we show we care about each other, when we feel excited about what we're doing so that we want to invite people, then we will grow. Grow not only in numbers, which is always good, but also in the quality of our relationships, as well as the scope of our relationships. So that's why we value community. It's what will cause us to grow. But what does that word mean? Well, it has a couple of definitions. One of them, a community is a group of people that live in the same place or have a particular characteristic in common. And that's a normal way we talk about communities. We talk about the Buckhead community or the Garden Hills community or a golf community or retirement community. All these geographical ideas around the idea of having something in common, but there are also ones around hobbies and other things. I even heard the other day about the Yelp community. Are any of you in the Yelp community? I don't know exactly what that means, but and certainly we talk about communities based on race, the Asian community, the Hispanic community. All of those are ways that we use the word community. But for us, for a church, for Second-Ponce in particular, what does community mean? Who is in our community? Is it our active members? All members? Even the ones that don't come? What about people who visit with us? Maybe they visited regularly for a year. Are they a part of our community? What about the people who watch us on AIB and now more than ever watch on Zoom or live stream and we don't see them anymore? Are they part of our community? What about the people who go to our preschool or the people that participate in the family life, the CWC over there? Are those people part of our community? The Respite Care, the caregivers and the clients of the Respite Care, are they part of our community? What about our neighbors around Garden Hills, the ones that bring their kids to ride their bicycles in our parking lots? Are they part of our community? What about people who don't believe, non-believers, people who don't know God? Are they part of our community? The homeless people, they're around in our neighborhood. Who do we exclude? Well, I think the answer to that is we don't really exclude anyone, do we? Our community is anyone who needs to know God, anyone who we can share God with. So when we look at our vision statement, growing in Christ and community and sharing God's love in the world, that means everybody. That's a big task, so we have to focus our efforts on where we can do the most, where we have the most influence, where we can make the biggest difference. Community, that as a group of people is one definition of the word, but there's a second one. The second one is a feeling of fellowship with others, a feeling of community, as a result of sharing common goals. So it's a feeling. How can we describe the feeling that makes a group of people into a community? What are the common goals and interests? And for us, what is that feeling of community that we have? Bill had us sing one of my favorite songs on the community worship, "Blessed be the tie that binds." And community is the feeling, the tie that does bind us, the beliefs that we have in common, the beliefs we have about the Bible, about God and as Jesus our Savior, those beliefs we have in common, the unity of purpose. We talked about our mission statement, our vision statement. We have that in common. But very importantly, we are a caring family. We love each other. We care for each other. You sit together every Wednesday because you get to know each other and know about each other. We are a family. A community is a family. A fellowship is a family. And that's an important part of what binds us together and makes us a community together. We didn't invent that in the 20th century or even the 19th century. The first church was built on community. Any of you recognize the Greek word? You recognize it in English. Koinonia. That Greek word is the word for fellowship, for that feeling of community. In Acts 2, it says the members of the early church, very early church, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teachings and fellowship, koinonia, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. That was the foundation of the early church, was the relationship that they had among each other. They needed each other. The important things were the teachings, learning what the apostles had to teach them, and living together in fellowship. Also in 1 John, we declare to you what we have seen and heard so that you may have fellowship, koinonia, with us. And truly our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. So in this passage, the whole purpose of sharing the gospel was to create this feeling of caring, concern, fellowship, koinonia, not only with each other, but also between God and you and the people. So this idea of fellowship being important to the church goes back to the beginning of the church. Another aspect of it is that the church is made up of many people. Each of us have different gifts and talents. And they're throughout the New Testament. You see verses like this: "For as in one body we have many members, and not all the members have the same function, so we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually we are members one of another." The church functions in community because each of us can do something different. Each of us has different strengths. And we combine those in the purpose that God intends for us, and what we can achieve is much more than we could separately. One final thing that we benefit from being in community, and this comes from Hebrews: "Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works, and let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near." So it was God's plan for the church from the beginning that we be together, that we meet together, that we look out for each other, that we encourage each other, and that when we do that, we are better for it and we are better suited to God's purpose. So that's why we value community. The connecting, the caring, the inviting, that is what the model that God gave us for the church. That's what he intended for the church from the very beginning. I had a reading assignment like all the other council chairs. Mine is a book called Growing an Engaged Church by Albert Winesman. And the key word there is engaged. I will not give you a full book review tonight, but if you ask me, I can give you more detail later. But the key word in this book, throughout this book, is engaged. What does it mean to be engaged? He begins by saying being involved is what you do. Being engaged is what you feel. You can be involved, you can participate, you can show up without being engaged. When I read that, I immediately thought of a history class that I had at Georgia Tech. in the spring when the windows were open because there was no air conditioning right after lunch. I participated in that class, but I wasn't really engaged. And we can be doing the same thing. We can be here. We can be doing what we've always done without being really engaged, without having that emotional connection to what we're doing. Simply put, engagement is a measure of the sense of belonging. Do you feel like you belong to the group? And in that sense, are you engaged? And the premise of the book is that when more people are engaged, you have a healthy, spiritually growing church. So it comes down to belonging. The power of belonging. How do we create that? What does it mean to belong? What causes you to feel like you are a part of something, that you belong, in particular the church? Well, this book outlines several things. I've summarized a little bit, believe it or not. I can identify with a mission statement. That's why I've kept repeating that vision statement. Do you feel like that's something that you can get behind? Do you have opportunities to learn and grow? You want to get something out of an organization or out of a church if you're a part of it. So are you having chances to grow in your personal faith journey? You have to feel like you're important, like the church needs you. That's an important part of belonging. And that you have an opportunity to do the things that you like to do most. It's almost like the phrase, if you enjoy your job, then you never have to work a day in your life. It's kind of the same thing with the church. If you're doing something you feel called to, you feel equipped for, you feel that's you're gifted for and skilled for, you will get joy from that, and you'll never get tired of doing it. If you're doing it because you got tapped on the shoulder yet again for another job, then you might end up being burned out, and in that sense, you're not belonging. You're serving. You're working for the church. So that's an important thing, and that's one of the main themes of the book. Is how you become engaged by getting joy out of your participation. And then finally, the relationships within the church. Those are always important, and you see them here at the tables. I see groups that sit in the same place every night, every Wednesday night, because they have those relationships, and that's a good thing. That's what we like, and we know that small groups are a part of that, a big part of that. A few years ago, when people a few decades ago, when people started talking about small groups, I thought it was something new. Then I finally realized it's what we've been doing all along, primarily with Sunday school, but with other things added to that. But we know that a small group is where people will know that you're not there, where you'll be missed. It's where we want people to get involved when they come into the church, because they'll establish those relationships. It's easier in a small group than it is in a big room. And you have those shared experiences. But one thing that I wanted to point out that the book reminded me of, and I'd heard it before, is that small groups, because they are such close relationships, they can appear to be closed. If you think about it, are you comfortable in your group to the point that you really aren't ready to introduce someone new to your group? We have to be careful about that. We don't do it consciously. But when someone comes into your group, do you say, welcome, glad you're here, and then continue to talk about the things that you have in common that the other person may not have? In fact, the book goes on to say that after about 18 months, any group tends to be a closed group and may need to divide to grow. Just something to think about next time someone visits in your classroom. That'll go away in a minute, I think. So we value community, growing and caring and connecting. That brings us to the community council. So how do we do that? How is the community council carry out this charge to grow, to have us grow in community and create those stronger relationships? Well, it really boils down to several things. One is creating opportunities where we can get together, whether they're fellowships, whether they're outings and things like that. But I've said before, giving everyone a way to use their gifts in service, which also means they know what their gifts are. And that's where the community council and the discipleship council will ultimately be working together to try to help people understand how they can serve, what they are good at. We talked about the community, how broad in scope our community really is. So we want to create ways to strengthen relationships with those areas in our community that are beyond our walls, beyond our members. And then create the excitement that will cause us to want to invite others, because we've got something that we appreciate, we value, and we want to share with them. So that's, in general, what the Community Council is charged with doing. So you've seen this list before, I think. The Community Council, besides me, is Pat Kerr, Gary Branch, Eddie Applegate, and our staff liaison is Allie Osborne. She's been very helpful. We've enjoyed working with her. And in these 7 weeks, we've met several times and have done several things. One thing that we do is, perhaps more so than the other councils, we have service groups. We have groups that, for the most part, already existed to carry on the work of the church. We have the greeters on Sunday morning. Anne Marie organizes those. It's not the council members. It's a volunteer, it's a lay person who leads and works with that group. But we do have a new one that we started just a couple of weeks ago, the coffee team. That we have people who volunteered to help us, and we have coffee that we put out outside in the common area over in the adult Sunday school area. And I've been very pleased how many people got there early, for one thing, and took the time to just chat and drink coffee. We had a couple visiting the first time, and they were in that group, and they got to meet several of you in that group, the Rasmussens. So that's exactly what we want to happen. We want to create an opportunity for people to get together and know each other. The heritage team that John Roma and Judy Birds lead, they maintain the artifacts, the history, the stories. And in that sense, those stories are part of what binds us together. The bereavement host team, this is what Doc was referring to a minute ago. The group of people who will show up at funerals to make sure that the families and the guests know that they belong, that their loved one belonged to a church that cared for them, because we're going to show that same care and concern. So we're, as Doc mentioned, we're getting people together to be here for Jerry Goldsmith's service next week. Many of you have already gotten an email from me and have already responded. But if you haven't and you can be here, just let me know by email or by grabbing me by the arm and tell me you'll be here. We could certainly use everybody. So that's, once you do it once, then I'll ask you again next time we have a chance. Another one is the flower team. Many of you know what that means. The flower team takes Sunday's arrangement, Sunday's pulpit flowers, and on Monday morning they come in and they divide them into a number of different individual arrangements. I came yesterday Monday to take some pictures, and I was just amazed at how much they enjoyed it, how well they did it without even thinking about it, something that I never would be able to do. But they just smiled and talked, and next thing you know, they had 4 beautiful little arrangements and then delivered them. Sometimes some of them went to the front desk of a facility. Some went to the front door of someone who wasn't there or couldn't come to the door. But we did get to visit. I went with Marilyn Tanner, and we were able to visit with a couple of our members who are now shut-ins, and had a good visit with them. So that's an excellent ministry. All of these teams need your help. We have people, but we could use more people. Eddie Applegate, also a member of our council, he wrote an article that appeared in the Signal a week or so ago about, like I mentioned, the different gifts that we all have and these different opportunities to serve. And we put that on a web page on our website. You can go to spiegel.org/volunteers, and that will always be a list of things that you can do and tell you how to get in touch with those. So that's a part of what the Community Council is doing, but we're also helping with other events. Two events that have been regular events for us: the Easter egg hunt that draws in our community around us, and also Trunk or Treat, both of those. The Community Council will be helping Allie this year, primarily recruiting volunteers and getting things together for that. But we also already have on the calendar a couple of other events that will help us to just get a chance to get together and to know each other. A picnic on the plaza in May, and then an ice cream social. Doesn't get much more old-fashioned than that, does it? On a Wednesday night in June. And then at some point in the year, we're hoping to be able to put together some sort of event that promotes racial reconciliation and understanding and getting to know people who are different than we are. So we're working on those things. A number of other initiatives, and again, this is 6 or 7 weeks into it. We took on the Moments in Black History for Black History Month, and I hope that you've gotten a chance to see those. We were shooting to get 4 people to do them, one for each week in the month. We got 9. People were very willing to do that, to come in and make a recording or make a recording at home. You'll see more of those. I think 6 of them now are on the website that you can see them there. They come out in social media as well. Another thing is called Parent Connect. Back last year, there was a Friday night Zoom call for parents of young children, and that kind of waned toward the end of the year. And we got an email from Amanda Payne. They felt God leading them to restart that. They felt a need for parents to get together, to have this time to get together. And they had some friends, not members of Second-Ponce, who shared that need with them and wanted to get involved that way. So in the old paradigm, you would call up and say, Allie, you need to start this again. In the new paradigm, Amanda and Aaron said, we want to do it. We want to do it ourselves. Help us. And they met with Heather, who shared the ideas that she had before. We on the Community Council said, great, go for it, and we'll support you wherever we need. This is exactly what we envisioned a year ago when we were going through this reorganization. People seeing the need, people being led by God and stepping forward to do something on their own. And that's exactly what Amanda and Aaron have done, and we're very excited about that. An area that we're focusing on as a council is our Community Wellness Center. There are people there who come to our campus regularly. We don't know them that well. Relatively few of our members go over there, so we're looking at ways to try to work through that. The WMU made some gift bags for the kids over there. A lot of kids on a Saturday morning, 400 kids playing soccer or basketball, that sort of thing, or 150. I exaggerated a little bit. So the WMU made those bags. The Community Council rounded up some volunteers. People wanted to come help, and we handed out snacks and bags over there to kind of a first step to make sure those families with young children knew that they were a part of a church that cared about them when they were over there. And we have other plans going on. Allie has been talking with the manager over there, Cedric, and Pat Kerr is very close to the CWC. She's one of the instructors over there, in fact. So she's been talking with Cedric. So we've got a couple of things in the works. It turns out that a number of the people that participate at the Family Life Center are struggling with loneliness and grief and things like that, and that's an outlet for them. So we're looking at ways that the church can help support them in that spiritual part of wellness. And very soon you're going to hear about an opportunity that you have to come over with some of your friends and go over to the CWC and have a little fun time together and a little fitness class. So keep a lookout for that. So these are some things that we're working on to help strengthen our relationships with each other and with the larger community. We're also talking with Garden Hills. Most of you know we've had a relationship with the elementary school, Garden Hills Elementary. Some of those things got put on hold because of the pandemic, but we met with their PTA co-presidents earlier this week, and we're on track to get started with some of those things. Their spring and fall events, serving as room parents. Most of you probably know that PTAs want room parents for each room. At many schools, Garden Hills is no exception, not all classrooms are able to come up with parents. So we're going to be kind of the adopted parents for a couple of those classrooms as that gets going. The reading program, many of you read with them. We're going to hope to get that started again. And then the last thing that I mentioned under this category is tools to match skills and interests with opportunities. Remember, that was a key thing of getting people involved and getting people engaged, is knowing what your skills are and finding ways to use those, a way that would fulfill you. So many of you have heard about Realm, and you can stay a little bit after we're finished tonight and hear more about it. Realm has some tools that may do exactly that for us, so that it will help match you up. So we're looking at that. So we need your help. The whole organization exists to bring you in to be part of what we do. So I ask you to prayerfully consider what God is calling you to do. Is He calling you to do something different, something new, something maybe out of your comfort zone, like he did the Pains? I often think that when you see a need, when something bothers you, why doesn't somebody do this? Why doesn't somebody do that? We should be doing more of this. I believe that that's often God calling you to do exactly that. So I would just ask that you pray that God will lead you to where He wants you to serve. Pray that He will show you things that you can do, and pray that He will give you the courage to step up and do that, to give it a chance. Because we know throughout the Bible that when God calls you to do something, He also promises to give you everything you need to do it. So that's what this whole reorganization is about. That's what all the councils are about. That's what the community council in particular is about. We want people to be involved, people to be engaged, people to grow spiritually, people to feel like they belong, people to be excited so that they would want to invite people to be with us. And that's our vision, that we grow in Christ and community and share God's love in the world.
I want to jump in with just a few extended challenges to two of the things that I think might be resistant points for this group. First of all, Ron, thank you. That was a great presentation and really clear overview of not only how your committee functions, but how the whole system functions. But I imagine two of the things going on in the room tonight are, one, you're preaching to the choir. This is the group who knows it already, right? Y'all have heard some part of this many, many times, and it's gotten embedded. The challenge for us, though, is that this group is a small part of the larger group. And so I think one of our tasks is to figure out how we get this clarity about this system into the larger church. I'll speak to that more in just a moment. The other thing that not everybody in the room might be thinking, but some might be thinking, I did my thing. I served my time. I'm too old to get involved in any of this stuff anymore. So I've got two specific illustrations there. I don't know if I told y'all last Wednesday that last Monday, the 7th, I had lunch with Dan Barker. I went to his apartment at Wesley Woods and had lunch in his apartment. I said, Dan, how are you keeping your mind active? How are you staying involved, as much as involved as you've been in everything all your life? He said, well, I've just been elected president of the Homeowners Association. He's 95 years old. Just got elected president of the Homeowners Association. My second challenge in that regard, without a specific age, Barbara Haig volunteers every week to help old people. The respite care that, isn't that impressive? Barbara reminded me Sunday that when I was listing off so many opportunities to serve in mission around the church, I was doing a representative, not an exhaustive list, but she reminded me that I could have done a commercial there for the respite care that we're hosting here 2 days a week to help people in different stages of Alzheimer's. It's a one-on-one caregiver ratio, so it's very volunteer dependent. And Barbara's coming every week to jump in and help care for somebody else. So nobody in the room has aged out of any of this stuff. Particularly if you look at it this way, if we look at levels of involvement in this new structure, you've got council chairs like Ron who are taking on a really big responsibility for all of us. Then you've got a group who are serving on the council itself. That's a big chunk of responsibility. But because of this new structure, there are three other things I want to challenge you to consider. One is to take on a project within the group. Somebody here, for instance, could say, we're going to be around for the 4th of July. I've got some stuff to give to this anyway. I want to take charge of the Peachtree Road Race. And you'd go see George Trussler and sign up, say, I'm taking that one off your plate. I've got the Peachtree Road Race. I've got the Easter egg hunt. One way to get in is just find one project. Because part of what we noticed that brought this structure to our attention is that people were eager to jump on a project. Yeah, I'll help out with that. I'm in town. The reluctance was to sign on for a year's commitment to a committee. Well, I go travel a lot to see the grandkids. I have a lake house. I this, that. I don't know that I can take on a year's responsibility to serve in X. But a particular project on a particular day, you look at the calendar and say, yeah. So some folks in here could take lead on the whole project. Another level of engagement here is to just work the project, right? I'm not gonna plan the Easter egg hunt, not gonna be in charge of the Easter egg hunt, but you got me on the day of the Easter egg hunt, I'll be here, right? So let me give a couple of examples there. Oh, and here's one other way to think about your contribution. Do you have a skill set or access or opportunity that cuts across all of the councils? You are particularly good at social networking and communication. Well, you could tell people on any given council, let me be in charge of the social media part of that, right? Another example is Gary Branch, who is always so generous with Chick-fil-A meals when the church needs that kind what he has that's special, peculiar to his profession. He's able to cut across all of the councils and offer his special offering into a lot of different places. So when you start thinking about it at all of these different levels, everybody in this room and beyond can grab hold of something and advance the mission somewhere, because at some level everybody gets a chance to engage it. This March, we're hosting March Mission Madness. So we'll have 150 or so teenagers who are coming to Atlanta to do mission projects. Well, that's a big undertaking, too daunting for many people in this room to take on. But part of what's being done around that weekend, and George and his missions team are making sandwiches for a whole bunch of those folks. Well, that's not too big for anybody in this room to get hold of. Yeah, George, I'll come help make sandwiches. So another way to think about this is where you can just raise your hand on anything you see. You do not need to be invited. Anything you see in the signal, anything you see anywhere that says, you know what, I could do that, just hunt them up. Put your hand in the air. Because what I would love to happen at the end of this is kind of the challenge I laid down Sunday when I mentioned George's picture being taken at the mission trip, and I said, where are we going to take your picture this year? That everybody has a sense that they contributed something somewhere to advance the mission of the church. So that's a challenge for everybody online and in the room tonight. But finally, I want to close with this one, because, as I said, all of you get it. I want to ask all of you to do one of two things or both. One is appeal for 5 minutes in your Sunday school class to give a 5-minute overview of what I just said and what Ron just said. Just say in 5 minutes, y'all, here's how everybody in the church can get involved. Doc knocked down about 4 different levels of engagement. Would you find one of those things you can do, right? Just a 5-minute overview. And then take the challenge to just find one person who doesn't come on Wednesday nights, doesn't come to the deacons meetings, church and conference meetings, somebody in the church who might be in your Sunday school or you know from some other way, and just explain it. Just say, do you know how the church is reorganized and how you can plug in, so that we can start pressing what 30 of us know into the life of the church and into the consciousness of other people. So help us be ambassadors of this, because the livelihood of and the success of this is going to be both depth and breadth. We've got to have more people as committed as Becky and Gail and George and Ron to take leadership of these councils going forward. But we've also got to grow a large base of people who are ready to grab hold of part of it at some different level. Has anybody got questions of Ron or me? Like I said, this is the group that could teach it at this point, so there might not be. All right. Everybody finds some place to grab hold. Everybody finds somebody to explain it to. Every Sunday school class gets a 5-minute Reader's Digest. Thank you much. Go in peace. Go to choir and sing pretty for Bill. See y'all Sunday.